Welcome to Gartner ThinkCast. I'm Karen Stokes-Lockhart. Today, we're tackling one of the biggest barriers to AI value creation, human readiness. While AI capabilities continue to accelerate, most organizations are still struggling to turn that potential into real business outcomes. Not because the tools don't work, but because workforces, roles, and leaders aren't ready. The hard truth? Technology isn't the bottleneck. People are. In this episode, previewing a Gartner webinar, VP Analyst Alicia Mullery breaks down what's actually happening. It's not a job apocalypse. It's hiring restraint, role redesign, and a fundamental remix of talent. Now, here's Alicia.
I am excited to take you through some of the big concepts that we've been sharing with our clients all over the globe. So let me dive right in and start off with just kind of the state of where organizations are around AI right now. At the end of last year, 2025, 1 out of 5 AI initiatives were achieving ROI. So about 20%, and 1 in 50 were achieving true disruptive, transformative value. So for a lot of organizations, they would say to me, it's all right, but we want more. We want more value. And when we look at what does value mean, what's the kind of value that's being seen, from a CFO perspective, 74% say that they're seeing productivity gains, right? So this is like Alicia saved 46 minutes a day or is making faster decisions. That's good, but it's not a financial number we can take off the bottom line. And that financial ROI, only about 11% of CFOs are saying, yes, we're seeing clear ROI. So obviously, this is not good enough for most CFOs and for most organizations. And what's happening at the same time is there is this adoption gap. So if you look at the first curve up at the top here, we call the AI innovation race. This is everything happening out in the industry. This is when you wake up every morning and you look at your phone and there's a million podcasts and news updates about the technology space, about what the vendors are creating and what are the capabilities that are out there. That is growing very rapidly and high. Whereas the second curve at the bottom, the lighter blue, this is the AI outcomes race, the ability for organizations to get value from all that technology. And you'll notice not only is there a gap, but it is widening. And it is the widest gap we have seen between the technology that's available and the ability for companies to capture it and get value out of it. So this is the state of what a lot of organizations are feeling right now. And if I had to sum this up in one sentence of where we think companies are, what I'd love you to take away from today's session is this. Not all the AI technology is ready, right? Not all of it is 100%. There's still things to be developed there, but it's a whole lot more ready than humans are. And when I say this human side, I mean everything within our organizations, right? AI readiness is helping us understand, is this science fiction or is this real? Like what's the capability that's out there in the marketplace that we can access? Human readiness is everything within our organizations that lets us take that opportunity, capture value, and then keep getting it. It's our workforce, it's our organizational structures, it's our processes, it's our change management, it's our data capture, it's everything within our organizations to capture that value. And that is the bigger gap consistently across organizations that's not working right now, that we need to improve. So not to say everything, as I said before, not to say that everything with AI isn't ready, but the human readiness side is more important. So I want to take you through a couple of things that I think are important on this human readiness side. Number one is first, in our organizations, do we even understand what value is? I think a lot of IT leaders on the line, you have a definition of it. If we interviewed your CFO, your head of HR, your marketing team, your CEO, everybody would have a different definition of value, right? So the framework that I would start out with, that I would rip out of this presentation, take a screenshot of it, is on this next slide. I'll take you through each of the 3 layers here. We think there are 3 types of value with AI. The first one on the left, we call defend. So this is about value. These are about use cases where we are augmenting our employees. This is about using AI, in many cases, generative AI, to save some time, to write better emails, to get decisions done faster. And that's great stuff. But typically, it's not going to be a financial return. It's not something you can take off the bottom line. So we call this ROE, return on employee. In the middle is what we call extend business cases. And this is about using AI to create competitive differentiation. So using AI to re-engineer an end-to-end process that you have, or to use AI to create better pricing for your customers. That is where we see financial gain. In fact, what we see is you need to re-engineer somewhere between 30 to 60% of your end-to-end processes to see this financial ROI. But that's where you'll see it in these kinds of business cases. The third kind of value is what we call an upend business case. So this is about using AI to completely disrupt the marketplace, to discover new products, new services. We call this return on the future, or ROF, not because you won't get a financial return on it, but it's just a longer term bet, right? You're not going to get it immediately. And why I think this is important is because what ends up happening is a lot of times I'll hear an executive or a business leader listen to a podcast, talk to a vendor, and they'll see an extend business case. So they're going to expect ROI, but then they go buy a defend use case and they get ROE. And so there's this disconnect that ends up happening of what kind of value we're expecting and what the value we're getting. So one of the first pieces of human readiness is be really clear on the value we want. And my recommendation here would be to take a portfolio approach here. If you think about all you got 100 pennies and how much do you want to put into AI investment, I would probably only put 20 of those pennies into defend business cases, and maybe more like 50 or 60% of those pennies in the extend, right? And depending on how aggressive and risk averse you are, how much you really want to upend. But this is number one, right? Having a language around value and being really clear of what we're looking for. Now, after that, one question that comes up a lot, it's often an elephant in the room when I talk about human readiness, is on the people sides about what we sometimes hear referred to as this job apocalypse. Has that happened, right? We see in the news, in a lot of headlines, all of this talk about AI replacing jobs. So we've done a lot of research into this and continue to look out into it. And what we have seen, the first half of last year, we did a large analysis and we continue to keep track of it, is that if you look at the very bottom right of this slide, less than 80%, like almost 80% of job loss for last year had nothing to do with AI, right? It had to do with uncertainty. It had to do with tariffs. It had to do with inflation. It had to do with lots of things. What we found is that there was only 1% of job loss that came from pure productivity gains, from people saying, AI is doing so much great work, I don't need Alicia. We only saw that as 1%. What we saw as much larger is the 17% you see in the middle of what we call repositioning. And essentially what this is when you see a lot of these headlines of Salesforce saying they don't need 4,000 heads, or IBM taking out certain parts of their organization, behind the headline, what is happening is typically they are reducing headcount in one area and they are hiring net new headcount in another area. Now, why this is important is because it's not saying that AI is filling up and being so productive we don't need people. It's a strategic business decision to say, we're going to remove people in this area because we think we're going to have more profitability, more growth if we move people into different jobs in different areas. So I think this is important to know in this story, that when we look at this right now, layoffs, job loss is not the big story of AI right now. In fact, what we think is the far bigger story that organizations need to focus on is role redesign, job redesign. We think this is a 20 times rather bigger effort than hiring or layoffs. And this is where I really want to dive into, how do you start thinking about this? Because this is as we show here, right, a big effort. Common question that comes up immediately when I talk about role and job redesign is, well, what are some of the new skills? What are the new skills we need for AI? And I'm going to start off by saying, one of the things we have found to be true is that AI is far different in terms of the demand of training and change management than past technology we've had. So on this slide, if you look on the right, for traditional ERP, we often, if we had 100 days to implement ERP, we'd need another 15 to 20 days of training people, and then another 50 days, 50% of the time, on re-engineering processes. But on the left, with AI, that number increases. The effort required for training and preparing our people jumps to 25%. And when we think about the change management required to redesign processes and workflows and all of that, it's up to 200% more effort. Okay. This is a huge hidden tax on the human side, the human readiness side, that a lot of companies are underestimating. The way I like to say this sometimes is we understand the day one bill for AI. We don't know the day 100 because some of these hidden costs are coming in there. And part of that is the training and the job redesign. So what are some of those skills that everyone in your organization needs? I'm going to start first by saying, what are the skills that everybody needs? And then I'm going to double click into showing you how to think more specifically about particular roles. So first, what are the skills that everyone needs around an AI dominant future? Number one is use case identification. So being able to recognize where is there a good opportunity for AI? And as I said at the start, right, with that framework we looked at, ROE, ROI, ROF, where this shift is going to happen is that a lot of employees, right, we may naturally look at ROE, augmentation. But as I said before, the value is going to happen when we shift more right, looking for use cases that are more about the reimagining of processes end to end, or the reinvention, the ROI and ROF. So having employees who have the skills and the knowledge to look more to the right becomes important, along with general technology fluency, understanding just enough about the background of how some of these tools work so we can understand the limitations of it. The third skill, which is still important, it's been important and still is prompting, having effective prompting, and in particular, really pushing beyond where we are now is having the ability to understand the context and help in that prompting craft for the context of the organization, the question you have, the situation that you're in, the risk that you may need the Gen AI to account for. And finally, the last one is what we call discernment here. Now, what I don't mean by this is I don't mean, can I go in and just verify that what the tool said is actually correct? It's actually correct. Of course, that's important. That is table stakes around AI. Discernment is going a step further to say, not only is this accurate, but is this useful? What is the output that is coming out of here? Is this useful for whatever decision or outcome we're trying to create? Because one of the things that we're experiencing right now is that while AI looks like it saves a lot of time, it's actually also creating a lot of additional work for people, right? I'm sure we have all experienced this where someone, right, suddenly generates a 20-page note that now they get sent to you that now you have to read, and there's so much more for you to consume. Part of that comes to discernment. That needs to become some of the new social etiquette within our workplace of, is this useful if I do this? What's the social norm of what should be established? Now, that is, as I said, general skills for all employees, but let's dive a little bit deeper into specific work and specific jobs. And how is AI changing that? I'm finding that everything AI touches, it starts to morph what it touches. And we have to be prepared for some of that. So I'm going to share an example with you. This is an example for a software engineer role. Now, Gartner is building lots of examples of these in the IT space. I think we've got like 15 or 20 right now. But right now, I'm just going to show you one. And the first place to start with is to figure out, to start to hypothesize, how do we believe AI is going to transform workflows? So on the page, what you see here is you see 5 stair steps, level 1 to level 5, and that represents the rough maturity of agentic and generative AI. From level 1, this static kind of disconnected chatbot, all the way to level 5, where it's autonomous in the SDLC. The decision that organizations need to start making right now is deciding across these levels, what do we want the human to do and what do we want the machine to do? right? Like in the beginning, we need AI to answer some of the questions outside of a workflow, and the human's going to manually validate it and copy it and paste it. Versus maybe like at a level 4, here, we want the AI to be doing, like multiple agents be doing some routine tasks all at the same time. And the human is the one that's going to be directing those agents. Now, a couple things to note here. Not every workflow do you want to get to level 5. For some workflows, you may decide level 3 is good enough. And right now, most organizations, where the technology is, what's been adopted in their organizations is more like level 1, level 2. The point of this is this kind of decomposition is the kind of work that we are seeing companies who are really engineering for ROI value, realizing if I got to re-engineer processes, I got to figure out how roles are going to change. And I need to help my employees understand the vision of where they're headed as well. Now, we've done deeper work into all of this then to look across roles, and I'm just going to show you a little snapshot of a couple of them, where we've created heat maps to say, as the technology matures, what happens to these roles? And you can see basically the darker the blue, the more we need a human, the lighter the blue to white, the work gets automated. And there is an asymmetry to how capability or how capacity is released. So for example, we see what happens in the software engineering role is that AI can automate some of the core tasks of that job more quickly. Now, does that mean we should get rid of all of our software engineers? No, we would not say that at all. We would say now that evolves what the software engineering role is. It creates more versatileness versus, for instance, a people manager, where we see the technology is never going to fully automate the job. It's going to augment it to a really high degree. Now, as the core of this job gets created and pushed more, you have to then decide what are some of the new future capabilities of what we want this role to do.
Thanks for listening to this latest episode of ThinkCast. That was Gartner VP Analyst Alicia Mullery. To learn more about this topic and to register for the full webinar, follow the links in the notes. ThinkCast will be back wherever you listen to podcasts a week from today. In the meantime, please rate, review, and share with a colleague so neither of you will miss it.